Statistics SA is set to reveal the fourth quarter of 2022 GDP numbers tomorrow. And given the extended load shedding and economic impact it's had, we discuss expectations with SABC News Economics Editor Tshepo Mongoai. Tshepo, good evening to you and welcome. There have been some dire and terse predictions for GDP growth tomorrow. Some people agree and some people say it's actually going to be worse than some of the predictions so far. What are yours?
Well, we've seen the unemployment numbers. The picture is still worrying, marginal improvement. And we know that that often speaks to the issues of growth. You can only create jobs if the economy is growing. But of course, any movement in the right direction is worth noting. So we've seen the year started pretty well with about 1.7%. And then later on, there was a talk of a recession. And indeed, the second quarter, that we've seen a contraction. And that actually, the talk of another recession was getting louder. But then we've seen a better than expected number in the third quarter, which was also a positive number, about 1.6%. Now we are in the fourth quarter. Of course, most economists are not expecting a significant improvement in the fourth quarter. Probably a negative number. But if you look at the whole year, that's where the concern has been around 2022, if indeed we're going to see a growth in 2022. The expectation is that indeed we may see a positive number come out for the whole year, south of 2%, some are saying 2.4%. But if you look at the overall picture, it's still very, very small in order to make a dent. If you look at the unemployment numbers, we've mainly somehow to protect jobs that we have and regain some of the jobs that we lost during COVID. But we still have, those numbers are still leaving millions of South Africans outside the job market. They cannot enter because the jobs that we are creating in the majority need a certain level of skills. And those people don't have. We need to create jobs on a bigger numbers that we need to make a dent. But we're not creating those kind of jobs.
Right. Let's talk then. I mean, people get really nervous when you start to talk about negative numbers. Now, we know it's the fourth quarter. It's kind of wrapping up that financial year.
Sure.
But how much of a tone is it going to set for the rest of the year? Because we know that all we need is two consecutive negative quarters to be in a recession environment. And that is absolutely something that we have to avoid at all costs.
Absolutely. Not quite good for this current year. If you look at the growth projections for the overall 2023 are not looking really great. There's a talk of 0.4%, 0.5% for this year. Yeah. So it's not really promising. Of course, we've seen the load shedding intensifying as we're starting the year. And there were people who were saying we may even see a negative number for the year. But there's a glimmer of hope if you look at the fact that China is opening up. So there's more activity from China, and that will also translate in Europe, giving us more businesses. And that perhaps the talk of a recession in Europe has actually died down. So that is, it's promising. But our problems are domestic,
They are domestic, and that's the point I want to pick up on. If you think about our infrastructure anomalies and the parlous state of our infrastructure, and also, in a sense, the unexpected, unintended consequences of natural disasters, which means there could be potentially a lot of jobs unlocked in this economy. How does South Africa use a bad moment to create a good one? By providing jobs for people in those roles?
Yeah, I'm sure a bit of training would help, especially our young people. We have came up with the unemployment tax incentives. That was actually a step in the right direction, except that there were companies who were complaining that they're not getting paid on time. But we know that SARS has actually strengthened its audit to ensure that even those who are taking advantage of these things cannot get away with it, and they're able to prevent them. But there are programs that are supposedly must be creating jobs and training the disaster, perhaps working on fire. There's been some initiative. But the scale of the problem is quite big, and it would need the private sector and government to come in and work together. And unfortunately, the private sector, where it is in the moment, there's still a lot of concerns. And they're pointing a finger at government and say, you need to get certain things right. You need to make sure that we've got proper roads, we need water, we need electricity in order to, to make a difference in those communities.
Tshepo, thank you very much.